Well, and that's the thing that I love about the work that, when you and I are together, because it's easier as I get older, but I have to really focus. I have to focus on staying in this little bandwidth that they occupy. So I'm in that, it's like a radio signal, right? So it's the radio channel, and I'm in there going, okay, it's stronger now. Yep, good. And I have to hold that. So for me to have to think of a question, I have to let go of that focus, go back to conscious thought, come up with that, and then go find the channel, the frequency again. So it's much easier for me just to stay in there and other people to ask the questions. That's great. I love that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, okay, so the Anunnaki had the technology where they would just travel in their spaceships instantly through space and time. So, that brings a big question about what Zecharia Sitchin translated about them coming to Earth and traversing space in their spaceships, and what problems they faced, and how they got to Mars and so forth. And one would need to go back and reinterpret this, because you can imagine when Sitchin was doing these translations, his interpretations were based on what he believed, or his reality, his knowledge of space. Sure. He believes in planets and space and solar systems the way we explain this, and that is most likely a very different structure. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm just saying that the way that it's structured and the energies and the physicality of it is very different from how we've been, how it's been explained to us and how we imagine it. Because we've never been to the moon. We've never been, well, the moon is the closest celestial body to us. The big question about what the moon is still out there. Why is it there? The mysteries of the moon are virtually infinite. And then we can't really see the other planets unless you start looking through a telescope. And then the question is, well, what is it that I'm actually looking at? What am I looking at? I'm seeing this little ball in a sphere. And then we've got these very beautiful, glossy pictures of these other planets taken by satellites that they've shot into space. And I'm starting to think, hold on, can we believe those photographs that they're showing us? They all look incredibly airbrushed to me. Airbrushed, and I don't know, it's just always something, a big question mark about, okay, which graphic artist did this one here and that version there? But that's a whole nother discussion. But it does bring up these big question marks for me. And to come back to the Anunnaki and their spaceships and how they traversed, and how we have to go back and reinterpret the translations of the Sumerian text, because what it says could be very simple, but our interpretation of it is very different.
Yeah.
Well, how we can say things in English, it can have many meanings, many meanings. One sentence can be taken up various ways.
Yep. Well, I think what I understood of the concept of a ship is that there is a container, because multiple people would come. So there would be a group that's coming to do this particular work. So there would be various Anunnaki, there would be equipment, there would be plants, there would be things, and that those had to be contained. So there is a container that everything goes together. So that when they come together in a unit in some kind of contained thing. But on this last trip that you and I did, they were explaining, when they allowed me to go up and see one, that it's a completely organic thing. That if the room needs to be this size, it just becomes that size. If a table needs to happen, a counter surface needs to happen, it just happens. That the ship is an organic living thing with consciousness. So
wow, that's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I've forgotten that part of my research many years ago into ufology and industrial military complex and Area 51 and so forth. And there was a great interview with this guy, I can't remember his name now, and he was reasonably prominent on the ufology and industrial military complex in Area 51. He was a young kid when he developed this rocket technology. And he developed this amazing technology that is like, his rockets were faster and better than anything else available that even the military had. So clearly he had a very scientific mind, and he would shoot. He was able to shoot these rockets with incredible accuracy. And the video that I recall seeing, I'm sure I probably copied it. I've got a copy of it somewhere. This is much later. He's doing this interview on YouTube. He's probably in his late 30s or mid 30s when he's doing this interview, and he recalls the event that happened to him when he was about 15 or 16, when he was making these rockets as a young kid, as a teenager. And suddenly this government SUV, black SUV, rocks up at his house on a farm. They lived somewhere out in the country, and these 2 or 3 or 4 guys in black suits get out and say, we want to talk to you about your rocket. He said, oh God, I'm in trouble. And they said, no, we're very interested in your knowledge and your ability. And so how accurate can you make them? And he said, well, as accurate as I want. And they say, well, and they gave him coordinates. And they said, can you land the rocket in this coordinate? And he said, sure. So he programmed his rocket and he sent it up, and bam, and they went, and there it was. The rocket landed exactly where he wanted it to land. And then they took him, and he was a young kid, and they took him one. And again, he describes how they went into this elevator, this shaft, this lift, and they went down like many, many, many floors down. And then they got out, and there was this elaborate research facility, whatever it was, and they took him to this one big, huge place where there was this weird-looking, what they described as a spaceship or a UFO, and they asked him, and they basically told him, can you figure out how this works? And then he describes how when he touched it, it wasn't metal, it wasn't wood or rock or anything. He said it was organic. It was like it was alive. And it had a wound on the side. It almost looked like a wound in an animal. From the story that he described, I almost imagined a whale, like a big whale, because even described the surface outside felt like skin of some creature. And it was dark. It was a dark gray, blackish color. And he walked through this wound because there was no other way to get in except through this wound. And then he found what would be the cockpit or the control place. And he said there was it literally was that you had to become one with this craft to be able to navigate it. And that's the video, and that's the information that he shares, and that's pretty much where it ends. But it's all consistent. And the more you hear, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, this would have been really outlandish and really out there. And now, as we realize what our capacity is, what we can do with genetic engineering and genetic manipulation today is pretty much anything. Our geneticists can program DNA to do anything, to create a skin of any kind, to create a certain shape and size, anything. So
I love that. Yeah, that's very similar to what they described to me. I remember Brant asking, could you take, he said, so for example, could you take me aboard a ship? And they said, well, we would have to completely contain you in such a way that your consciousness doesn't affect the ship. They said, because your consciousness would affect us hitting our destination.
Yes. Yeah, that makes complete sense. Okay. So let's jump to Adam's calendar for a little while. So now we're talking about spaceships that are containers. Obviously, it's a contained environment. It's made of a certain material. Whatever that material is remains unknown. It could probably be various materials. All depends who you are, what species you are, and what you've evolved and developed to serve you as a interdimensional, intergalactic spacecraft.